networking is a long game, and it's a long game of building you need to become the center of influence.
What does it take to scale to 7 figures and beyond and grow with purpose? Tune in for stories, strategies, and tactics from founders and business leaders who've been there and done that. Welcome to another episode of the Scaling Business Podcast. Today, I'm really delighted to be sitting down with my good friend, Simone Douglas. Simone is a marketing industry veteran, hospitality industry veteran, agency owner, publican. I always struggle to pronounce that name.
Yeah.
A publican and overall very nice person. So today I'm really looking forward to chatting with you, understanding, uncovering your story, and learning about how you've been able to, for lack of a better word, grow multiple businesses and how you manage all the chaos at the same time being a very strong advocate for your industry, especially the hospitality industry, because I've noticed you being in the media. So I'm really excited today to have this conversation. So welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. It's great to finally catch up.
Yeah, absolutely. So the part that I always like to start is, has business always been a thing for you? Were you one of those lemonade stand kids who who started hustling when they're young, or is business something that comes to you a bit later in life?
Yeah, no, business came to me a lot later in life. I always liked being in charge. That's always been part of kind of my career. But I started by going into a management traineeship in a really large hotel group when I was in my 20s. And then I became their fix-it girl, and I used to fix all the broken pubs for about 10 years. And then I went and had my first child, and hotel business isn't conducive to good family balance. So from there, I got out of hospitality for a long period of time, did my diploma in transpersonal counselling, and I was managing a registered training organisation. And then I kind of had my own counselling practice on the side, so I started to dabble in business. You know how people like dip their toe in the water, while it's not too scary, still getting a paycheck, so you know the mortgage is taken care of. But then there always comes a time, I think, where you're forever going to have a hobby business, or you have to just take a leap of faith. And so child number 2 had arrived at this point. I was working for a different college or registered training organisation. And they wanted me to work full time, and I just didn't want to do it. And so my husband at the time goes, "Oh, why don't you just do your social media thing full time?" Because I'd been consulting on the side, and always, you have to get very good at marketing to fix broken businesses, because if your marketing's not there, you're not going to have the customers anyway. So yeah, I kind of took a leap of faith. It's 13 years ago now, and and so now I think what happens then, once you've got your first business, is you really you have an appetite for risk and change.
Yeah.
And you're not scared of it. And so from there, I kind of took a bunch of calculated risks and accidentally ended up with 2 pubs. I had a cafe at one point, but we shut that down because it was hemorrhaging money. So not every business is successful. But, a smart person once upon a time told me, fail fast. Don't let your ego get in the way. If you can see that this is not going to work, just kill it and move on. Find a new toy.
So I want to go unpack that a little bit. Going back to the marketing agency, how did you get your start on social media? Because you're coming from very diverse background.
Yeah.
You're working for an RTO, you're working for a council. I didn't even know that you had that's your background, but that's quite fascinating.
So how did I get into it? So to begin with, when I was working for a small RTO, and when you're working in a small business, you're always looking for ways to make more money for the business. And so social media was just becoming a thing. So Facebook was kind of out there. Instagram didn't exist. I think Google Plus had just been released. That's how long ago we're talking.
That's a long time ago.
It's a long time ago. It's been mothballed now. But yeah, so I was running courses for small business owners on how to use these platforms for business. And there were a lot of consultants out there kind of doing the wrong thing. So it was in the day of like Facebook had plugins with static iframes and, you know, all of those kind of things. And most business owners had handed the keys to their profiles back then. It wasn't even really pages to start off with. And didn't know how to get control back. So I just started teaching people how to do it for themselves. And then I was like, well, I can probably turn that into a business and charge, because busy people don't want to do it themselves. They want to just pay someone and have it done.
Absolutely. Oh, no, that's exciting. So let's drill in on the social media business. What were some of the earliest challenges getting that business off the ground? And at what point in time do you start to feel like, okay, this thing is working now? I can finally, I guess, leave the part-time job and this, that switch over between the job to the, because obviously when you're starting this new business, there's a lot at stake. You've got kids, you got a mortgage
to feed people with some,
you can't just afford to just jump in the deep end and experiment till forever.
Well, and I think, at the time, so when we decided, I'd been dabbling. So, and it was actually the impetus the choice that I was faced with was working in my existing job significantly more hours, being less available as a parent, or going in boots and all and like giving it a red hot crack. And I think I probably had the advantage, my husband at the time said, what's the worst that's going to happen? Like, if you haven't figured this out, how to make decent money out of it in 3 months, just go get a real job. So, and it's not like I was qualified in multiple industries, so I wasn't too concerned. But it was fascinating in so much as like that 3-month deadline, and all I had to do was make sure that I could cover the mortgage payments, really. That was, like his wage covered, food and bills and all of that kind of stuff. So I think in my terror and I wasn't a networker then. I didn't even know what a strategic network was, or referral partners, or all of these kind of things. But I accidentally happened along and found BNI, so Business Network International, little chapter, and they wanted a social media person to join. And so, I met my first referral partner, who was a web designer, who was a member of that group. But more importantly, I'm really good with systems and rules. And there were rules about how you networked with people and how to get the most out of it. And there were books that you could read. And so I actually just said to this room full of people, and I think I was like 2 months in, so I only had 4 weeks left to get enough clients on board to not have to make a difficult decision that I didn't want to make. And so I just said to the room, guys, I actually need to onboard like 4 more clients this month, to do their social media stuff and their marketing. Otherwise, I'm going to have to go get a real job. And thankfully, they loved me enough that they really didn't want that to happen. So then they leveraged their networks to go and find those clients. So I got my 4 clients on top of I probably only had 4 other clients, let's be honest. And so I managed to keep my new job, which was my business. And from there, I think the rest is kind of history. But yeah, it was interesting.
No, that's really exciting. Because it shows that sometimes we overcomplicate it. It's just asking and coming from a very genuine place.
Yeah.
Because if you didn't ask, most likely you would not have been able to.
I would have failed.
You would have failed, and I think it's even just the courage to come out and step out, go to BNI. One thing that became apparent after that, BNI became a very, very big part of your life. And I think one thing I've always admired about you is you've always been very good at those strategic partnership, whether it's BNI or like embedding yourself within the industry you work in. So like if it's the hospitality industry, I've noticed you've always been very embedded in terms of like what are the different industry association, like knowing your industry. Can you talk about like how you got into that, and someone trying to establish a strategic partnership strategy, strategic network strategy. How would they go about starting that whole process? What is because I'm sure there's a very
granular
it might not started
process.
it might not have started that way, but over time it became something that you perfected quite well.
So I call it, so you need to have a strategic networking action plan, which is SNAP for short, because I like acronyms. And so what you start off with is like, well, what types of clients do I want to work with? You know, in what industries? What are the industries I have the most experience in, or are going to be the most sticky clients, or sometimes are going to convert the fastest, so they're in more pain than the other ones. And then once you've got those industries down, it's like, well, what are their industry associations? Where do these people go network? And then what value do I have that I can bring to that association? Because we all know you meet partners at different industry associations and you're like, yeah, you just want to sell me stuff, go away. So it's a long journey because you have to earn your stripes. And so if I use like the Tourism Industry Council of SA is a good example. So we've been partners with them for, I think, coming up 9 years now. But when it first started, for the first 12 months, I didn't get anything out of it. I'd turn up to all the networking events. I'd make friends with everybody. I'd run workshops for them on marketing and social media, you know, and nothing really happened. In year 2, I maybe got 2 clients out of it. But year 3, I was doing okay. And then, you know, now I'm on the board. And so it's, you know, like you just continue to cement that relationship over time. I think the biggest mistake people make is that they think, again, that they're going to go get this partnership or sponsor this thing or get involved in some way and money's going to rain from the sky and isn't it going to be lovely? And life just doesn't work like that with relationships. You actually have to spend the time. The other thing that I learnt, though, is that you can only manage 4 of those kind of partnerships or networks at any one time. So these days I probably have 5 or 6, but 2 of them, Meredith, my director of marketing, is responsible for managing those relationships because you do have to show up. You have to be seen and you do actually have to build those relationships with people and then follow up. And I think that's the other piece is we're often really bad at the follow-up. So we meet the people, we go, yeah, let's catch up, it's great. And then we don't come back to them and have a conversation. And we don't maintain the relationship. So if you think about it, like, you know, we've worked out that we've known each other for nearly 18 years now. We can go 5 years without talking to each other. But then when you reach out, the quality of the relationship is still the same and it's solid. And that's because in the early years, we spent time together and we would catch up and have really interesting conversations. You know, so it's about that building and earning the relationship so that you're not just an acquaintance, you're actually someone that's considered more than that.
Yeah, because it's a time investment, and I think the challenge with Adelaide is not challenge. I think it's a good thing. It's actually a good thing. Adelaide is all about relationship and long-term thinking. Which can be a bit challenging. Someone coming from a place where people are perhaps more transactional and make decisions quicker. But then again, I find that once people make the decisions, they are a lot more loyal. You're able to maintain long-term relationships because okay, so you talked about Snap. What was the process like getting into the industry association? If someone wants to get in within the industry association, like
so you really just there's 2 ways. If you run a business that's within that industry, it's relatively easy. You just go to the memberships officer. But if you sit alongside, so as a supplier to industry or an interested party, then industry associations usually have corporate partners, and so you need to speak to the corporate partnership person. But it's not always about speaking to them. You know, they'll go, oh, we've got a gold corporate partner, it's $10,000, and you go, that's nice, I don't have $10,000. You know, again, if you have something of value to their members, you can often negotiate, you know, a pro bono component of that where you might give up your time, or the association might need, you know, a new website or whatever it is, so you can do a contra deal of some description. But it's really all about discussing how can I bring value to those members. And then I was just really lucky, I suppose, that I got, so when Brand South Australia was a thing and it was a networking organisation, I had a partnership with them. The Australian Hotels Association, Tourism Industry Council, and Master Builders was the other really good one for us. So it looked like I was everywhere, because I was forever delivering a workshop for someone or doing something. I was probably at 1 or 2 events every week, like in the
Are they
early days.
paid when you do these workshops for the industry? Are they paid workshop or
Not
it's a combination of
always.
paid and
Yeah, it's a combination of paid but it's paid in so much as I'm offsetting the cost of my partnership. So
Yeah.
rather than paying for that up front.
Okay.
But now I'm at a point where, I do less of that contra deal and more of the, if you'd like me to run a workshop, it's $3,000 or it's $5,000 depending. But you have to get to that point. You can't just walk in. I'm always amused when you have someone that's new to industry and they think they can walk in off the street and go, pay me $10,000 or $5,000 an hour. Yes, you might be worth that. I'm not saying that you're not. You valued yourself at that. But industry doesn't know you. And so unless they've seen you deliver something to someone that they know, you're not going to get very far. So you really do have to go find that first client or the first workshop or the first example.
Yeah.
Because that's the social proofing.
How have you found the ROI of having networks? Because obviously having strategic partnerships, it does require a fair bit of time from maintaining the relationships, making sure you're always showing up, making sure you're nurturing those relationships.
Yeah.
And obviously now you run a marketing company and you do your own advertising and you've got other methods of client acquisition. How have you found it in terms of ROI of that kind of stuff, the partnership stuff versus the other stuff? And if you're recommending to someone, is it a case of one starts and then start to the other, or it's kind of like, is it like a mindset of one is long term, one like how do you,
I suppose so all of the digital stuff is what I call instant gratification, so it's like I'm putting all my content out, all these things, and as much as content is a longer game, it's still generating ultimately inbound inquiries. It's really easy to figure out if that's working or not, but networking is a long game, and it's a long game of building you need to become the center of influence. So like a good friend of mine, Paul Gordon, he calls me the Oracle.
You are.
If he needs anything fixed,
Yes.
It can be the most random thing. In fact, he messaged me the other day. He goes, do you know somebody that can translate a contract that's in Mandarin into English, this, that, the other? And I'm like, yes, I do. I met her at an event 5 years ago. Let me just message her and see if she still does that, and then hooked him up. Or somebody needed, my friend Jason's got a real estate agency and he needed someone that spoke Burmese to talk to a client, but it was a specific dialect that very few people spoke. And I'm like, hold please, let me ask my network, and I found someone for him. And so networks they pay dividends that you don't know that you want paid.
Yeah.
So my life reads like a bucket list because of my networks. If someone had said to me that I would be, on the main stage in Singapore for the BNI Global Conference, which has 3,000 delegates, delivering a session, 13 years ago, if they'd said that to me, I'd go, you are freaking insane. I've never spoken to more than 10 people. But, that was one of the things that I managed to achieve.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite things, and it happened just because I built networks. And someone said, you should be up there. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, who do I talk to? Oh, let me introduce you to the conference organizer. Someone else last year, said, oh, would you be prepared to come and deliver a session at the national conference? And it's the Association of Industry Association Executives. Oh. Okay, so there you go. There's an association for everything.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, because that industry association is a massive target market for me. So I'm like, absolutely. I'm like, what topic do you want me to talk about? Oh, can you talk about how, AI can reduce mental load and free up, industry association executives to do what they need to do? I'm like, absolutely, I can talk about that. Wasn't a paid gig. She goes, but I hope that you'll get some work out of it. Now, so far, that has turned into about $60,000 worth of consulting and other speaking gigs and different workshops. But I went there not with the mindset to sell, just with the mindset to provide value, and that's the other key. If you engage with your networks, it's not about what they can do for you. You actually need to make all the deposits in all the bank accounts so that then when you need a withdrawal, they're actually happy to help. They're like, absolutely, I can do that for you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because I think, yeah, I can attest to the power of networking, because even this podcast would not happen without all the networks.
Yeah, exactly.
All the people that I've met over. And I think the way I tend to look at networks is, it might not be a case of like you're going to the mindset of selling one-to-one. It could be a case of like, I might know Simone, and then Simone might know a lot of people. So, but I think the short-sighted mistake is people think, I'm just going to go to that event, networking event, and sell to Simone.
Yeah.
As opposed to thinking, no, Simone could be a door opener. Simone could know all this industry association, or maybe John could know all these other people.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like thinking wider beyond like just that single fast transaction. One thing happened because I remember when we first met in networking, we hit it off straight away, and a lot of people struggle with going to a networking event, working out what to say, and making sure they're getting an outcome. And especially now that, in-person experiences are now starting to become a big thing.
Yeah.
What would be the strategy you say to someone, especially someone who's starting out in business, or maybe they're not very, networking is not a very big part strategy. If you have to pull this, if someone was walking into a room and you have to pull them aside, say, all right, before you go in there, shoving your cards into everyone's face. What's the kind of pep talk you'd have with them?
Well, there's two things, I think. So number one is actually don't have an agenda. So I always trust that there's somebody in that room that I was meant to meet, and that's why I'm there. And so often, like, I very rarely cancel an event that I was going to because I never know who I was meant to meet. And so it's like this internal spring in my head that goes, no, but what if this was like that one person that you needed in your life in 3 years' time? So get rid of the agenda of I need more contacts, I need this, I need a sale. You just got to let it go. You're expanding your circle. And so that's number one. Number two is don't make it about you, and have some really interesting questions lined up. So don't be the person that goes, what do you do? And they tell you, and then you're like, oh, that's nice. So that must be interesting. And then everybody gets bored really quickly. I like to ask them some curly questions. So, I was at a conference for quality assurance professionals, so pretty dry. So ISO 5000 type stuff.
Wow.
And anyway, I met this guy. He was an auditor, and I'm like, oh, so what do you do? He goes, oh, I audit companies for X, Y, and Z. I don't remember what he was an audit for. I'm like, what is the craziest place that you've had to do an audit like that? And he goes, no one's ever asked me that. He goes, but I had to do an audit at a snake venom factory. So they harvested snake venom to make anti-venom.
Yeah.
And he's terrified of snakes. And anyway, so his whole demeanor changed, because it went from being this relatively inane conversation to, actually something where he's like, it was clearly a moment in his life that he had strong emotional connection to. And so when you activate that and have that conversation with somebody, they transfer some of that emotional connection to you. So the next time that they see you, they're more excited to see you because you were an interesting human that let them talk about themselves in a way that they were connected to. So it's about having questions, like I'll say to someone, okay, so how long have you been doing that for? Oh, 20 years. I'm like, well, geez, how do you keep yourself like invested and entertained in that as a job? Because I've done some things for 20 years and I fall out of love with them all the time. So, when was the last time you fell out of love doing what you're doing, and how did you fall back in love with it? That's another really good question. When you become that person that asks interesting questions and collects other people's stories, then you become the person who can connect someone to somebody else. Because if like if I ran into somebody down the street or at a networking event and they were complaining about, I'm trying to implement all of this artificial intelligence into my business, I can't figure out how it applies to my systems. I don't know what I'm doing. Then, I could say to them, oh, you need to meet my friend John. He's amazing at that stuff, very system orientated. And that's exactly what he's doing is implementation right now. full disclosure, you're going to need to set aside at least an hour when you have coffee with him because he really loves to learn all about the ins and outs of your business. It's how his brain works. So when you have those stories and those connections, it's really easy to get excited about introducing people to other people. And when you're the glue like that, you become the glue because you've made, I haven't bought something from you and you haven't sold something to me, but I've connected you to this person over here. When you're a person that does that all day, then you are front of mind all the time. And then when someone needs your product or service, of course they're going to come to you.
Of course.
Of course they are.
Because you become the hub, the connector that connects people. So people, because I think the biggest challenge I find with a lot of people in business is the way it's kind of, for lack of a better word, finding that initial conversation that could lead somewhere. And if all your initial conversation that could lead, if all the conversation with people tend to be around what you're selling them, and there's no other point of communication, it ends up being that disingenuous, oh, so how's your children doing? Oh, I noticed, I saw on LinkedIn your kid had a sports day. And you know clearly there's nothing, they're only
they
interested,
don't care.
They don't care, they don't care. They're only
making conversation.
They're just making conversation, building rapport to keep in touch so that they can potentially sell you something. But I think if you do what you've said, which is you position yourself as a hub, people come to you anyway for other things, and then it becomes just a matter of time until they come to you for something you need. What's been your recommendation to picking the right strategic events? Because like I said, there's lots of different things you can do, and you've definitely know this well because you've experimented with a lot of different types of events, different events, different types of places.
I think, it's let's say strategic. I think the people at the events need to align with who you are as a person. Now that means, but they shouldn't all look and sound like you. So this is the trick is, so there's two things. You want to make sure that you haven't inadvertently built yourself a networking country club. So, what I mean by that is, you roll in, you say, "Hi, Fred, it's great to see you," so you're seeing all the people who are either in the same industry as you, they're the same age as you, they're the same culture as you. That is a stagnant network and it will constrict ultimately. But so you need multiple networks so that you are consistently expanding your field of awareness and the types of people that you engage with. I go out of my way to make myself uncomfortable. So I'm an introvert. I don't like large groups of people. Yeah, I'm generally exhausted by large groups of people, and then I need to go and build a little blanket for a little while on the couch. But because so I'll make myself uncomfortable. That's the first thing. The second thing is I will always be the first person at an event because then the crowd builds up around me, and so it's less stressful for me. And it's also how you become the connector. If you're the first person there and someone else turns up, they've got to come talk to you. They've got nobody else to talk to. Once you're already in a conversation, it's quite easy to transition to different conversations. And so being early to events is a very sensible thing to do. It also means that the event organisers really get to know you because you are that person who's early. So don't monopolise their time while they're trying to get ready to start the event. But be helpful. Do you need me to put out place cards? Are you all set? Can I help in any way? So again, if you become that person, then the event organizer is excited to see you when you arrive. They're also excited to connect you to somebody of value because you've been helpful to them. But yeah, I have the networks that I'm building on. So like whether it's, an industry association one, or it might be Showcase SA for argument's sake, we're coming into our second year of partnership with them. But then I will have networks that pop up into my field of existence that I don't know exist. And I go, well, I should probably go to that and see what that's all about. So I tend not to network a lot at women's only events. It's not... funnily enough, I'm not that comfortable in a room full of women. I don't know why. I'm quite happy in a room full of women and men. I'm quite happy holding court. I think when you get a room full of women, they have a whole different language, and it's not a bad thing. It's just different. The same as I'm sure if you have a room full of just men, they just talk differently.
Yeah, the dynamics are different, and you kind of, like I said, that country club type.
tends to come to the fore. And so, yeah, so I will deliberately make myself go to some women's only networking events purely because I find it uncomfortable.
Oh, okay.
And it makes me flex my networking muscles because I have to ask better questions and I have
Yeah.
to engage in different ways.
Yeah.
And so the other thing becomes really important to be able to read people's body language, to know what conversations you can break into and what you can't. So like if they're in a tight little circle, they don't want new friends. That's closed. So you're looking for those open circles and you're looking for the wallflowers. So the people that kind of stand up against the wall look like they're waiting to be shot by a firing squad. You can go and rescue those people with a decent conversation and become friends.
I will say my strategy tends to be targeting those kind of people, especially the kind of person that is more like slightly introverted.
Yeah.
If you can find a way to bring them out of their shells,
Yeah.
you tend to be amazingly surprised and you find that they tend to appreciate.
They do.
So I deliberately target those
You
people.
find friends.
I deliberately target. So in terms of like, sorry, I want to dig into this because I know this is an area that you're really world class at. So you talked about you tend to have about 5 of those things going. Is there an order to the madness in terms of like I pick these ones? Is there like, this is like this type of I hold the mix of, is there like an order or a way of is there a deliberate process in terms of picking the right mix of things to
Of
for
events?
you, whether it's event or whether it's associations, whether it's the things you need to get into. You know how you say you can have like different groups that you focus on?
So I suppose when I was in that kind of building sales phase, then I would have, so let's say I wanted to, I'm trying to think of a good example. I wanted to put on 3 new dentists for argument's sake. Then I'm like, well, where am I going to find these dentists? Because I need to make friends. Well, okay, so they're on LinkedIn. So I've connected to some dentists on LinkedIn. Some of them network at, business SA events or showcase SA events. So I'm going to go to some of those. But eventually I have to get to coffee, don't I? Because like it's no good if we're only ever talking at events. So it becomes like a really methodical approach to, have I seen them a couple of times? Have I engaged with some of their content so my name is popping up? And then, I just reach out to them and go, it'd be really great to catch up for coffee because I'd like to get to know you better, not because I'd like to sell you stuff. And I think that's the hard part, again, is most people, when they finally get to coffee, they come in with a little folder. Here's my, pitch deck, or, here's my brochure or whatever it might be. You're just there to make friends. If they open the door, so my thing is with the first coffee, if they go, oh, I've been meaning to look at my marketing, then I will never have that conversation in that coffee meeting. Okay. I go, oh, absolutely, I'd be more than happy to catch up with you and any of the team. Let's make a time after today, because today's just about you and me getting to know each other better. And the people are often like, oh, so you don't just want my money, you're actually genuinely interested in getting to know me. And that's, again, it changes the dynamic of the relationship from transactional, which is where you don't want to be, to transformational, which is where you do want to be. So those transformational relationships are the things where your energy changes because we're together in a positive way.
Okay. I'm just gonna dwell in that point a little bit. Just from a point of view of obviously coffees, physical coffees. You can only drink X amount of coffee a day. How do you?
Very caffeinated.
It is caffeinated. Thankfully for me, I don't drink coffee. Like I don't drink caffeine anymore. I don't drink. I stopped drinking coffee about 10 years ago. And then when I came back to coffee, I only now do decaf. So
sensible. I probably need to do that.
So if I was to do like 10 coffees a day, it would just be drinking too much milk and end up with so much strong teeth. So, but in terms of like obviously time management and making sure that you're able to sort of structure your time, because coffee means physically leaving the office, going somewhere, booking time, potentially driving, going back and forth. I'm just looking for like some practical strategy in terms of, are you condensing these coffees around a certain areas, and how are you managing, or maybe it might be you, but it could be now that your
Yeah.
business development person is doing that. How do they structure that for efficiency? Because it's striking a balance between obviously efficiency and obviously building those relationships,
Yeah.
and also you've still got a business
It's
to
exactly
you've got a
to
business to run,
run.
and
Yeah.
you still got you need to make some sales at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
How's the
would
balance there?
say in startup mode, I was having 10 to 15 coffees a week.
Okay.
It was like 15 hours of my week. If you're in startup mode and you're working a 38-hour week, you're not going very far in life, let's be honest. Because that's not how you grow a business, is working a full-time job. That 10 to 15 hours a week would be like if it was a tradie, we'd catch up at 6:30 in the morning. You know, I'm like, what time are you on site? Normally it'd be 7:30. I'm like, let's meet at Argos for coffee. And, we'd have breakfast and have a good chat. And again, when you involve food, that's always a good thing too. The other thing too is, I say to Meredith is you should never lunch alone. If it's your work day and your job is relationships, invite someone to the office for lunch. Bring in some sandwiches or whatever. It doesn't have to be, because often people get hung up, I can't afford to go to like this cafe and this restaurant 5 days a week for, lunch. I'm like, it doesn't have to be fancy. What kind of sandwich do you want? I'll pick some up from the deli, whatever it might be. But it's productive use of time. And I think my brain is really big on that. So I'm huge on what can I do in 2 minutes? If I can do it in 2 minutes and I have 2 minutes now, I'm going to do it now. If I can do it in 5 minutes and I've got 5 minutes now, I'm going to do it now. I think what people often fail to do is to get in the flow with their time and their productivity. So what I would say is, generally speaking, my rule was it's 10 coffees a week, 2 events a week that are what I call non-structured networking. So the business essays of the world or things like that, where there's like no expectations of referrals or otherwise. And then I would have 1 structured networking event a week, which was my BNI chapter meeting. So if you've got 3 events a week, and that's minimum, and 10 coffees a week minimum, so you're probably talking 15, 16 hours there. And then you've got, let's say, an extra, 20 to 30 hours of work and other prospecting and doing things. I probably worked like a 45 to 60 hour week in the first 3 years. Full disclosure, I'm a workaholic.
Yes.
Work is my happy place. So I don't have any other addictions, so work is fine. It's the least destructive. And it was about having harmony with that. So being very clear with the family what I was trading off. So if I was going to an event, that was fine. That meant I was dropping the kids off at school. And if I was dropping the kids off at school, I was taking them to a cafe for like baby chinos and hot chocolates on the way. Because as a parent and a business person, you have to remind your kids that they're important, because they will look at it and go, well, I'm not important because dad didn't come home or mum didn't come home. And, even now with my 15-year-old, he's just taken me to task on that, like in the last couple of weeks, and gone, I feel like we're just roommates. And I'm like, okay, so you're telling me that you would like more nurturing? And he's like, yes. I'm like, fine, what does that look like for you? So we have to have this whole adult conversation about what it is that he needs, because he's a young adult. But yeah, it's interesting because, in that other house, because his dad and I have split up, so we do week about. In the other house, they have what would be considered a traditional family unit. Both parents have jobs that they go do their jobs, they come home, they switch off, they're, doing their thing. As a business owner with 3 businesses, that's not how that works. If the chef calls up sick, someone's going to call me in the middle of whatever it is. So yeah, it's that balance and communication about, well, I'm doing this, so we're going to go to Japan for like 10 days on a holiday. Stuff like that.
Yeah. Now, I like how you've laid out the blueprint of, if you're a BD or a business owner, what is the right what is the right mix of events, the right numbers. That is very, very helpful, and how much time you spend with them. Now, what I wanted to do is tie that in, and also the fact that the part that I picked up that was really good is you're not just touching them from one point, you're meeting them in events, you're engaging in their content, you're connecting them on LinkedIn. So you are creating, for lack of a better word, multiple touch points, because it takes a lot of multiple touch points for someone to build a relationship, build that trust, eventually become a customer. Now, what I wanted us to do is to, for lack of a better word, tie it together, because you've kind of got both sides of the business development spectrum covered. Okay, so you've got the event strategy, you've got your event and networking strategy, you've got your partnership and partnership strategy, which is probably one and the same thing. And then you run a marketing agency where now you're able to do the advertising, the social media. If you are talking to a person who is scaling their businesses and they want to have, is there a way you can help someone tie all that together? So you can say, all right, here's a combination of this is what you should be doing from a marketing point of view. This is what your BDs need to be doing. So you're pretty much covering from different angles.
And I think, so to tie it all together, if you go right back to the start and you go, these are our industries that we want to go play with, or we are playing with, and we would like more of those clients that make us very happy, then you know that your event strategy is geared around that, and your networking strategy is geared around that. Your outreach strategy on LinkedIn should also be geared around that, so you're connecting to people within those industries. Your content strategy has to talk to those people in a way that tells them that you understand them and their industry. And so, your whole blogging strategy or your podcast strategy or, whatever it might be needs to be around that. And so we have, I'm very focused on AI at the moment. I think the whole planet is very focused on AI if they're clever. And so, we've got a blog every 2 weeks coming out that's on AI, but then we're still maintaining blogs for small business owners on different marketing opportunities and strategy. And then we've got, our ads are geared around the case studies for the industries that we want to talk to. So it's pushing people to the website, to the right pages, and then our retargeting is switched on in a way that means that they can't escape the brand. Once they've found the brand, we're just going to keep saying hello. And I think it's about, you really need to map out that whole spider web for your business, and avoid going for the quick wins, because even though digital marketing and advertising is instant gratification, it's not really. It's 3 to 6 months before you get all the data that you need and you've refined everything, and then you're going to have to reinvent it because your audience is bored with it anyway. But you've got to go find someone that understands that to have that conversation with too. And I think for a lot of startups and small business owners, the problem is, there are some really big ticket, high cost coaches out there with a lot of rah-rah going on, and and that's great. They got there themselves there, and they have a system, and you go and apply that system, and you can then be the person going rah-rah, and it's like, that doesn't actually work for everybody. Works for some people, otherwise they wouldn't have a business, but it doesn't work for everybody. And I think you need to find someone on the ground that's local, that you can have honest conversations with, and then you need to invite your network in to critique what you're doing. So that's the other thing, is I will often ask, my existing clients for feedback. Have you read this article that I posted? And if they go no, I'm like, well, do you mind taking a look at it? I just want to see whether it's resonating with the people that I'm trying to talk to. You need to be prepared to get in front of the camera, let's be honest. I hate myself on camera. It's fine, we all do. We don't want to see ourselves on camera. But, it's part of life now. People do business with people they like, know and trust. How do I get to like, know and trust you in a digital world? I need to see you on camera. I need to hear you talking about what's important to you, what you believe in, how you approach business. So that's probably my best piece of advice, is you need a strategy that ties all of that together, and then you're going to have to try and make that fit into your budget. Now, the advantage of AI is you can have an unlimited budget for AI consultants. It speeds up the process a lot, but you have to equip yourself with the skills to use those consultants, to build those consultants, to, and so it's about figuring out do I need to pay someone to do that? Or do I have the time and the mental capacity and the preparedness to make myself learn it? Because it's fine so if you've got a young person listening to the podcast who's a digital native, they integrate new technology really quickly because they automatically assume there's a way to make this do what I want it to do, because that's been their lived experience. Whereas, I'm turning 50 this year. I see the new technology and I go, is this going away? And so I don't have to learn it? Or is it actually here to stay and I'm actually going to have to force my brain to lay down new neural pathways? So I think it's, if you're talking to business owners that are like 40 and up, and, it's a little known fact, I think, that there are more people starting businesses in their 40s and 50s than there are in their 20s. And that's because it tends to be that stage of life where we're tired of our boss.
We're tired.
We don't want to work for the man anymore.
Yeah. And we've got a lot of lived experiences.
We do,
and something we can actually bring to the table. Yeah. And I'm not saying the young guys don't have anything to bring to the table, but, like, whatever you and I are doing right now, we would have done it for at least a decade or so, and then if you and I did industry hop like we did, you've got someone who was like faithful to their career, you're getting someone who's coming with 20 odd years of experience of doing the same thing. So it's a very, very, it's a good time for us to start. It's a good time to be starting a business in 40 plus, I think. Yeah. And
heaps of people do. And I think what you're going to see growing is kind of the divide between people-based businesses and technology-based businesses. So I think AI is going to spread that divide more. And I think that not everyone, but a large component of the younger entrepreneurs are really attracted to that tech space. So, their businesses are online. It's like drop shipping. It's, they're trading cryptocurrency or whatever it is. So there are all these like multi-millionaires being created in that space. Good luck to them. My brain won't stretch that way. So I have to stick with the people business. But there's room for both, and neither is more right than the other, I think. So
yeah. Awesome. I wanted to switch gears a little bit to coming to you. Obviously, you worked in the hospitality industry before, to now buying a pub.
Yeah.
First of all, what were you thinking?
I don't know.
Was it a case of like, I network all the time, I drink all these coffees,
that's pretty close. So what happened?
Might as well be the one selling the coffees.
Might as well be. So what happened was we were in the office in Kent Town, and we'd outgrown it, and I was needing to put on more staff, and I was going to have to be a grown-up and sign like a big lease.
Scary.
It was scary. It is scary. And so I was at a networking event. I was talking to someone that did serviced offices, and he put me in touch with a guy who just negotiates leases for people and saves them money. And that sounded like a good idea for me. So anyway, I met him, and it was like a Wednesday morning at 9 a.m, and I said, oh, look, I'll just tell you what I'm looking for. And, I doubt you can find it, but if you can get something close. And so I said, I need 100 square meters, upstairs. It can be more. I'll just sublease the extra to people that I know. That's fine. Downstairs, I need a training room with good natural light because I run lots of training and workshops. I'm tired of paying room hire and, all the things. I said, in a perfect world, just like a little bar, a cafe attached to it, because, I've done hospitality management and I run lots of networking events. And I'm tired of paying for all of the catering. Anyways, Face is doing all this weird stuff. And my general manager at the time goes, it's okay. She knows that you can't give her exactly what she wants. She just believes in asking for it. And he's like, no, I've got what you want. It's not on the market. Can you look at it at 11 o'clock? And I'm like, opened up my diary and I'm like, yes, I can. He didn't tell me it was a pub, by the way. And so I pulled up out the front of the Duke of Brunswick Hotel. And it was all, it's pretty run down back then. Like it had been, run into the ground. I'm walking around, there's like holes in the ceiling upstairs and like whatever else. But that was all fun because I had this, red hot negotiator that was going to negotiate with the guy that owned the building to fix it all. So that's fine. And so then I rang my partner, Alex, and I said to him, oh, babe, that unicorn I was looking for? And he's like, yes. I'm like, well, I found an Uber corn. It's even better. I need you to talk me out of it because, I knew the work that was coming because I'd turned around a lot of pubs in my time. So, and I'd sworn off ever getting back into the hospitality industry. So anyway, he came down that night. We went in, we had a look, and he's from a hospitality background too. He goes, I can't talk you out of it. It's just a lot of work. And so I said to him at the time, I'm like, right, you have one job? And he's like, what's that? I'm like, you need to be my handbrake. I will work myself into the ground because this is just how my brain works. So when you see that start to happen, when you see me run out of fuel, because that's, when you do this, that's what happens is you get stressed out of your mind. You're going to have to pull the handbrake and take me away from work for at least 24 hours or 36 hours. That's about how long I don't need much to recharge. He's like, okay, let's do it. And the rest is kind of history. I nearly lost my mind so many times because that business, when we took it over, it was turning over between $3,000 and $5,000 a week in sales, and the break even was $18,000. So, and we did it. I just got divorced. I just paid my husband out of the marketing agency because my accountant said that's what I had to do. So, so I had no capital. I borrowed $60,000 from my mum. She just got her inheritance. My grandmother had just passed away. And so I was like, oh, you know that inheritance? I'm like, can I borrow it? She's like, oh, I wouldn't lend it to any of the other children, but I'll lend it to you because I know you pay it back. So I had $60,000 there and a $30,000 overdraft on the marketing agency. It's not a lot of money. And I worked my ass off but we found the niche and we got all the things, and it took 3 years before it was like a profitable, all the time profitable business. And then we found another pub and we're in the middle of that journey now. So it's like crazy. Yeah. But I'm really good at like creating a space for humans to be. And I think that's why I'm good at networking too. It's really every human being that I meet, they have value in and of themselves just because they're not me. So, you have stories and people and connections and life experiences that I haven't had. And so by getting to know you, my life becomes richer. I learn more things. And so that's been my whole life. And now I just create that in a hospitality environment as well. So we have a 6-word story for our venues, which is the outside world doesn't matter here. So it doesn't matter who you are, what your beliefs are. When you walk through that door, you're just John. And so I can meet you as just John and we can have a conversation and we can have a discussion and, learn from each other. Yeah. But all of the politics, the bad day, the boss that yelled at you, the traffic jam, it all stays out there. And so that's a really powerful way of being in the world and creating placemaking in the world. Yeah. And I try and do that when I'm talking to people. It's like, it doesn't matter that I've got, a chef off sick and something else is blown up and God knows what else has happened, in the time that we've been talking. None of that matters. What matters is that I'm here with you because this is where I'm meant to be and this is the space and the time that I'm spending right now.
That's really cool. How have you been, especially with the pub business, at a time where the cost of business have really blown up? You think of the cost of electricity has blown up, even though we were promised it was going to go down. The cost of gas is actually really gone crazy. Yeah. Things like insurances, the cost of labor, just hiring people, man, like it's just people expecting a lot. It's expensive. And look, I don't blame them. The cost of living has generally gone up everywhere. So I'm not just trying to say people are wanting money for the sake of money. No. So, the cost of business has really gone up in the last few years. And then good old Simone decides, no, I'm going to go into a people business.
I'm going to go have another pub,
and stuff like that. What's been your strategy for navigating all that and keeping sane?
Trying to stay sane. Keeping sane.
Trying to stay sane. Or being sane, or is that keeping sane questionable?
Well, it depends who you talk to.
Depending who you talk to and what time of the day.
But no, I think it's, so there's lots of big topics in that. But I think, The first thing is you have to make really tough decisions as business owners, and they're decisions you don't necessarily want to make. I'd made someone redundant yesterday, like in the marketing agency, and they were like, well, but, and I'm like, the current financial market means that I think that in the next 12 months we will maintain our revenue but not grow our revenue. And as we have clients that decide not to do marketing, we will probably onboard someone to replace them, but I don't think we're going to grow, not in this 12 months with a federal election coming and a state-based election not very far behind, because in South Australia we all stopped making decisions now. So I said, I have too much headcount. I'm like, you're lovely, you do a great job, there's no reason for me beyond the fact that, I have too many heads in the building and too many wages to pay. So, if you're that person that puts off those decisions, or you're not looking at your numbers, you can go broke really fast, especially when you have multiple businesses, because one might be doing really well, and if you're not paying attention to this one over here, it's like, oh my God, there goes my house.
It's like your kids, you're looking at, making sure that every kid is looked after well.
Yeah, exactly. So it is the same. You also have to you need a system in terms of, you need to be looking at costs all the time. So I probably I've switched now to a company called Termino, where electricity and gas, they just change you to the best deal every month. They look at it and you get a monthly bill from them, so you're not dealing with the gas or electricity companies anymore. And you get this monthly bill, it's the best deal. They show you what your savings are on your bill. It's all good. Now, before that, and the impetus for that was I got a $16,000 electricity bill for like the pub, which was $5,000 up on the year before. So that squeezing happens. There's legislated salary increases for award employees, like hospitality employees. So, we know every year that that's going to go up by between 3 and 5%. And then you've got payroll tax on top of that and work cover on top of that. And so if you aren't looking at it all the time, if you don't know your numbers, and if you're not prepared to make the tough calls, then you'll go broke, or you'll have to close up shop. So there's so many hospitality businesses closing up shop, and it's because the customer base isn't there the way that it used to be, because everyone's in a cost of living crisis. And the profits aren't there in the way that they used to be, because we're in a cost of doing business crisis as well. So a lot of business owners, their first response to that is to work more hours to cut down on their labour, because they can really only influence the labour. Like, you can negotiate a bit on things like electricity, but you can't insurance, you got no hope, because your broker will go, this is the best deal I can get for you. You go, okay. So it's I think it's a challenging time to be a small business owner. Very challenging. But I also think that that's when your networks keep you alive. So I have so many people who book functions at my venues and things just because they're my venues and because they're part of my networks, and they want to support me and they want to support, what we're doing. And I think it's being able to go and ask for advice. I can ring an accountant that might not be my accountant and go, I'm thinking about doing, should I pay out this business loan or just leave it sitting there? And they'll run through it with you. So it's about having a network of people that you trust. I have friends that are lawyers that I can ring and I go, can I ask you the unbillable 5-second question? And they go, yes, you can. I go, okay. But then they'll ring me like 6 months later and go, can I ask you the unbillable 5-second question? I go, yes, fire away. What do you want to know? So it's about, being really clear about all of that stuff. And, I'm not the person that wants to be the multimillionaire. I'm really not. I'm quite happy with, I had 5 businesses last year and now I have 3. 3 is enough for me. I think my ego got in the way a little bit. I got a bit carried away. So we had the cafe, and it was probably losing, probably losing about $3,000 a week.
Oh, wow.
So, and it took me nearly 2 years to make that call.
Oh, wow.
So, the pubs were basically funding the cafe to operate. Now, if I was being a grown-up business person and not being an idiot, because anyone listening to this podcast go, why'd you leave it going? I should have made that call 6 months in.
Yeah.
You know, so when you first take it on, you expect it to take a little while before it's profitable, or, you know, if it's a consultancy that you're building, it's going to be a while before you pay yourself the wage that you would like to pay yourself. But there should be a line in the sand point. And so that's that thing about failing fast and not letting the ego get in the way.
But I can totally relate to that part where, because one of the last businesses I had, it failed spectacularly.
Yeah.
And my biggest regret is I did not pull the pin later.
Sooner rather than later.
Sooner rather than later. So by the time it came to time when I was pulling the pin, so much damage was done. So I found myself in debt, and then I have to sort of go through, spend the next year or so kind of recovering, paying debts and reconsolidating. Well, I probably could have just pulled the pin later. So I can totally relate.
Yeah.
It's that what did they call it? Sunk cost fallacy, or you kind of always have this.
Oh, yeah, I know.
We always have this illusion that I can fix it, I can turn around. And especially given you've turned around a lot of businesses, you're relying on yourself to sort of you think I can always do the magic one more time. One question I wanted to ask with the businesses, because with the pub, you took it on, it wasn't necessarily making a lot of money, but then and you said it took a couple of years to get it to break even.
Yeah. Well, we got it to break even in the first year, but break even's not making any money.
Yeah. Breaking even and getting to a profit whereby you can do that.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, and I'm not asking that because I see a lot of people pop up, they struggle. They just shut down so quickly because, you know, a lot of people can't last that long, or maybe they're not built like that, or what is it about you, or what is it you're doing during that time that allows you to be patient to allow this business to run for a long time? Is it the fact that you've got industry insight? Is it you're sucker for pain, or is it like you've got other things?
I think it's ego. It's ego. It's you know, I'm a firm believer that if you do the hard yards and you do the work, that things will take care of themselves. But what I got really good at, and what gave me the faith to keep going with the ones that I still have, are that I've learnt to ask for help.
Gotcha.
Which the ego doesn't like very much, because we don't like to admit that we need someone else's help or support, or, you know, I don't know how to fix something, can you fix it? So yeah, I've built an entire community around the businesses that we have. And so when you go, guys, you know, is anyone planning their Christmas functions? You know, I throw it up on LinkedIn. We book out our Christmas season in about 2 days because the people are nice and they want to help, and they know that I'll help. So if they've got a question, if I can help them, I will. They know that I'm available. And so really my one job is to be available to my networks. If I can do that, and I have teams behind me to do the work stuff, then, you know, that was always my dream, was to build businesses to a point where my only job was having breakfast, lunch, dinner, coffee, maybe a good single malt whiskey. And I said that when I first joined BNI, so like 13 years ago, because they'd go, what's your goal, or what does nobody know about you, kind of thing. And that was it. My one goal was to work to a point where I'd pretty much made myself redundant, and my only job was connecting people to people for mutual benefit.
Are you still with BNI, or I can't
No,
remember.
So the journey of BNI was interesting. So BNI is a franchise.
Yeah.
It's a global membership organisation, and so about, I'm going to say 4 years ago, the South Australian franchise was split into two, and the guy that owned it sold Adelaide North to me. And so I built that up to a point, and we were coming up for renewal, but they'd changed the agreement and they wanted you to work in it full time, and I already had a bunch of businesses, so it wasn't going to happen. So I sold it back to national office. So I'm not involved in it anymore, but it is a very good springboard for particularly new businesses when you don't have a network. So I really love it, because you'll get a community of professionals in all different industries who will kind of wrap themselves around you to help you to be successful. And it's particularly good if you're a migrant.
Yeah.
I think, because, you know, and this may be the wrong thing to say, but sometimes in South Australia and Australia, we can be really racist bastards. We can, so, not all of us, some of us. And so it can be both confronting and scary and difficult if you are a migrant business owner trying to build those networks, knowing where to start, knowing that you've got support from somebody. And so we see, like in my chapters, I had lots of what I would call first generation Australians who were, starting all sorts of cool businesses, whether it was nursing or in the NDIS or accountants. I can't pronounce Kamani's last name, but there's an accountant in St Agnes who joined. Kimani came and joined a chapter and was a member for a while. And, you know, it was, again, it's about just expanding your community, because also when you first, I think, come to a new country, you move within your circle of support, which is perfectly understandable. But if you stay there, then you're going to miss out on opportunities that were available to you. So structured networking is a really safe way to kind of engage with that. And safe sounds very melodramatic, but it's, you know the people are going to be friendly. You know what the rules of engagement are.
Yeah.
You know how long you have to stay for the meeting. And I've really seen lots of people blossom because they've found a BNI chapter and learnt how to network the Australian way, for want of a better term. And then they go out and they don't stay with BNI forever. Some people do, but lots of people just go, 1 to 3 years, and they really learn the skills that they need. And then you just see them off living their best life and being really successful. So having involvement in that for 12 years and helping other business owners find that for themselves, it's really validating and lots of fun.
That's awesome. I wanted to switch to, as we start to go towards the end of the show, so running 3 different businesses. First of all, before I get into the next question, is what's your strategy for managing the 3 of them? Is it you've got set days for this, set day for this, set one day for that, or management? Like, what's your process of managing?
So I think I don't have set days. Set days would be nice. I think I had to get really clear about what my responsibilities for each one were, and learn how to let go of things. So I stick to what my genius is, which is marketing strategy, and finance. So I'm really good with making sure that we don't go broke and that we actually make a decent profit. So I still handle, and there'll be people who will tell me that I'm an idiot for doing this, but I still handle payroll, and I still handle like the accounting side of things, because when you're that close to your numbers, you can see the micro movements, and it's micro movements that will tell you when trouble is brewing. So if you're too far away from those numbers, 3 months down the track, it's too late to fix something. You've already lost, in a big business, you could lose like $50,000 in 3 months. And so it's those micro movements. So I do the finance. I have set management meetings with each team so that they don't change. And they're on set days, but I just work in my flow. So I'm a morning person, which means I'm up at 5:36, and I made the very wise or unwise decision to adopt a rescue dog a couple of weeks ago. He's beautiful. I thought he was a small terrier, but it turns out he's an Irish wolfhound crossed with a Dalmatian, and so he's quite large and needs walking twice a day. So, so it's like I'm up early, I'm walking the dog's been walked, and then I'm like into the office, and I've got because my most productive time is between 7 and 11. So I get 3, 4 hours of like smashing out my own work or my creative work or difficult work. And then the rest of my time is just mentoring and firefighting. So, and my firefighting is they'll come and ask me a question. I go, what do you think you should do? And they go, I reckon I could do this or I could do that. I'm like, which one of those do you think is going to get you the best result? They'll tell me why. And if I think they're right, I go, seems, off you go. Push the button.
Yeah.
So it is that process of making yourself redundant in your own businesses. And the thing is, in order to get to that successful point where you've got the opportunity to make yourself redundant in your businesses, your ego probably got you there. Because it was the ego that said, you know what you're doing, keep going, just, and that internal resilience and grit. But your ego won't get you to the next stage, because you now have to be humble and recognize that you hired people who are smarter than you to do the jobs that you needed them to do, and you have to get it out of the way. And so for me, probably the last 2 years has been that process of just getting out of the way.
How has that evolution of yourself as a leader been for you, and what are some of the things you've learned about yourself in the process, and what's been your process of evolving yourself to someone who started by yourself, doing everything, learning to let go and being able to trust people, building those teams? How has your evolution been as a leader?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's been a process of, like, you never stop learning. And I'm a business book tragic. So every time I get on a plane, I buy a business book and I just read it. And I love proper books, like the ones behind you. So, cool. But yeah, so I'm always looking to learn something, and knowing that I actually don't have all the answers. So I'm a big believer in the Socratic method, where you just assume that you actually know nothing, and that there are other smarter people that you could ask, that, ask questions and they'll teach you things. So I think the evolution has come from always being clear about the type of life that I want and lifestyle that I want. And then am I moving towards that or away from it? And so when it comes to, building the teams, it's about, I really had to teach myself, what does a high-performing team look like? And read things like 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, which is one of my favorite books. And, it's really, and what's the other one? 4 Disciplines of Execution is another good one. And so, when you integrate it in yourself, that's great. But until you can teach it to your teams and they believe you, so that's the other hard bit. Is, like, you can lead all you like. You can boss all you like. Leading requires giving them a voice and giving them permission to have a louder voice than you. And that takes a lot of, internal awareness. Because your first response will be, no, hang on, your voice is louder than mine and I'm the boss. But if their voice is louder because they have a justified reason for it, like they know their stuff, or, they've found something, or they're passionate about something, then you have to, a good leader creates the space for that. And I like Simon Sinek says, leaders, the person with the most power should always speak last in a meeting or in a room, because the other people won't volunteer. Once you've set the agenda, they won't volunteer what they were thinking, because they don't want to step outside of the agenda that you've set. And I really took that on board. So, when I'm in team meetings, I'm very much like, right, what have you got? And we go around the room and I will speak last, because it's, I'll wrap it up, but I want to hear what they have to say.
Yeah, it's a lot of deliberate practice, and a lot of deliberate practice to think about all those things. You mentioned, we've touched on this throughout the conversation, which is, you're thinking about the kind of business you want and the kind of life you want to build. And obviously, the question I always ask people, because it's something that I struggle with myself, I am a workaholic like you. I feel like this is like a
Workaholics Anonymous.
Workaholic Anonymous. But then obviously, we both got family, kids, partners, all that kind of stuff. What's been your strategy that you found works well for you to being able to manage the entire craziness of running the business and managing your family, being a partner, being a parent, I don't know, finding time for yourself somewhere in between.
And friends.
Have friends. Friends.
Friends too.
Friends too. Yeah. Maybe some of your own creativity. But I guess, what's been your strategy for balancing and making sure that you...
So I schedule most of it, and I live and die by my diary. So I have this really cool exercise that I do generally in October of every year. So I take off the hat of me, the business person, and I put it down and I pick up the hat of me, the human being. And with that lens, I go, what do I need this year coming for me to be okay? For me to have the energy that I need to do what I want to do, and for me to be happy in my life. So I start with me, because if my cup's not full, I'm not helping anybody else. So it's going to sound, a little bit silly, but it's like, so I have all of my massage appointments for the year booked in with my massage therapist. So once a month I go and have a massage. I have all of my hair appointments booked in. Now I don't go to the hairdresser that often, but they're all booked in. I don't have to think about it. It's in the diary, and it goes in the diary in October for the following year. And then once I've got all my stuff, so whether it's personal training, so I go to the gym twice a week, see a personal trainer, whether it's my food prep time, so all of that's in the diary. And then I go, right, so I'm done. Now it's the kids. What kind of a parental relationship do I want with my children? And what do I need to do for that to work? And so it's, my youngest and I, we go to a restaurant once a month, just the two of us, because he's a bit of a foodie, and, it's like, then I'll talk to my eldest and I go, well, what do you want from me? What does that look like? And with him, he's just happy to work with me. Like, we do a whole shift behind the bar together, and, so he's learning the craft of hospitality and we're spending time together. But they're all in, and then it's like, well, fair. So I go from there, then I go to my partner. All right, so in order for me to feel truly connected and to be building on this relationship, what does that look like? And so from there, it's like, right, well, we need to get away. Once every 3 months, we need to get someone to babysit for the weekend or overnight. We just need to run away and date, and we need to just have dinner. Like, again, I have the luxury of having my kids every second week. So, every second week we have a date night of some description, but we're both hermits. And so date night is, some great music on and a good bottle of wine, and he cooks me dinner, or I cook him dinner. He doesn't usually let me cook, to be fair. He's much better at it. But, but that's all programmed in, and it's all in the diary for the whole year.
Oh, wow.
Am I taking the kids on an overseas holiday or off just to a beach house around the corner? It's in the diary. Then I get to my family. I've got brothers, I've got a mother that I need to keep in touch with, so what does that look like? And then friends come in after that. So I have a poker game that I have with a couple of the girls once a quarter. If I'm going to catch up with a friend for dinner. They all think I'm insane, by the way, but all of my relationships, all of the things that I need for me and for me, the human being, are scheduled before any of the work stuff for that year goes into that diary.
Why October? It's actually quite fascinating, as opposed to like people do all those things in December or January.
Too late.
Oh, okay.
So
that's
because I do lots of keynote speaking and I run lots of workshops, people are booking me. Like, I've got stuff in my diary now up until the end of August and September, and we're in March. So if I wait until December, January, gotcha. I already have work commitments in my diary. I already have, workshops or funded things. So I do it in October, because October is also when, November becomes silly season for networking. Christmas parties start. There's lots and lots of things that are happening. So you need all of you, the human being, stuff in place, so that all those new relationships and networks that you build over silly season don't negatively impact on that. Yeah. So it's all structure, and that's how I maintain balance. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm still my own worst enemy, because I sometimes will make the decision to move something that's in my diary, but what happens every time I do that is I ended up in what I call blanket fort mode. So my brain literally says, you've worked yourself too hard, you've not done the things that you needed to do to care for yourself. I'm not going to actually let you do any work, and I will be stuck on the couch doom scrolling for an entire day, because the brain just goes, no, you're done.
It has a way of our brain has a way of putting guardrails to make sure that
it really does.
We're not pushing ourselves. Is that part of your self-care routine as well? Because I think it's very important for us in business, and to almost, for lack of a better word, have your own mental health plan.
Oh, you have to. Yeah, I call it my happy bubble.
The happy bubble. That's awesome.
So my happy bubble is, and it's pretty strict. I'm very rigid, because it reduces mental load for me. So I just know this is what I have to do. So it's, like when I get up in the morning, got to take my vitamins because I'm getting old now and I'm not indestructible anymore. But so vitamins for me is like, got beef liver tablets because they're bioavailable B vitamins. I've got beet kvass, which is a fermented drink. It's good for probiotics. So I have a shot of that in the morning with my vitamins, then some creatine in some water because same thing. And then I have to walk the dogs. There's no coffee allowed yet. We've got to go walk the dogs. So now walking the dog for me is we back out into a national park and the sun's just coming up. It's a beautiful time to go walking. You've got, kookaburras and kangaroos and all the rest of it. So it's like a half hour, 45-minute walk up the fire track, up the mountain, back down the mountain. And then it's, we still haven't made it to breakfast yet. Now I'm having like bone broth with the cayenne pepper and all the other good stuff that you got to put in it.
Wow.
So I have that in the car on the way to work. I've also grabbed my food prep out of the fridge. If I've done it right for the week, I've prepped up a week's worth of salads with protein and everything. Because you have to fuel the body first.
Absolutely.
Because the body,
Absolutely.
and that's fueling your brain. If you are tapped out, you can't function effectively. You're not bringing your best self. But I also don't watch TV, news, listen to radio. No. So I've got a playlist that goes on in the car that is like a specific beats per minute. So it's a cadence thing for me. I probably don't even hear the words to the songs that are on it. It's just it's background and it's soothing. And then, when I get to work, I know what I'm going to do. And the first thing that I do, all of my pubs, 2 doors up from both pubs, have a cafe with really good coffee. So full disclosure, I could make my own coffee, but I don't. I walk in, I get a really nice cup of coffee. I walk up to my office, I start work, I smash the work out. And the afternoons are the same. I then come home, I've still got to walk the dog. I've got a sauna at home.
Ah, awesome.
When I'm being really good at getting in the sauna for 20 minutes, then I throw myself in the freezing cold swimming pool, which I love.
Are you
so
doing
you get a
icing?
bit of close.
Close
It's not ice, but yeah, it's close.
Yeah.
But I'm ridiculously rigid around my sleep. So I go to bed at 9:30 every night. It's rare that I will sacrifice sleep for anybody. Because I'm a morning person. I'm not a night owl. It's sometimes hard for my partner. He's a night owl. He likes to be up till 2, 3 in the morning. And I'm like, the spare bedroom is down the hall. Do not wake me up. Do not pass go.
Yeah.
But what I worked out is doing all of those things makes me a better human being. Because then I have the energy for, if that nearly 18-year-old young man that is my firstborn wants to have a conversation with me about what life is as an adult, I've still got brain capacity and presence to be fully present with him and have that conversation. When I neglect any element of that happy bubble, I'm not my best self, and I will be the person that's sat on the couch nursing a glass of rosé going, you can all go away, my brain's not functioning, make yourself pizza for dinner, So, yeah, and I'll self-sabotage. We all do it. But then I always have to get back on the horse.
How do you snap out of yourself from self-sabotage? And I'm only asking, I'm asking this for a friend. Because I can self-sabotage.
We all do it.
Doom scroll to infinity.
Yeah. Well, my thing is you literally just have to get back on the horse. So recognize that that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
So a good example is this week. So I usually food prep on Saturday. It's my thing. And so I cook up all my proteins and all the salads and it's all good to go. So I didn't do that this week. So I've been eating shit food all week. And consequently, I'm very tired. So, how do I snap back out of that? I've gotten really good at recognizing, usually after the fact, which is problematic, but sometimes you can see yourself doing it. So you have to cultivate the internal narrative that is, have I put myself first today? So, which we're conditioned not to do. So the question that I ask myself at the moment is, what would happen if for an entire year I showed up for myself first? And what does showing up for myself look like? Well, it looks like not having coffee before you've had your bone broth in the morning. It looks like prepping your food. It looks like going for the walk, even though you don't want to. And so then I just put mechanisms in place that make it harder for me to say no to those things. So, you know, if you use the bone broth example, everything is on the kitchen bench. And like Alex will say to me, can you just not put that away in the cupboard? I'm like, no, I can't, because if I put it in the cupboard, I'm not going to do it because it's not in front of me. When I get up in the morning, it's the first thing I see, and it's a signal to me that that's my job. I need to have that before I can have coffee. Yeah. So it's about adapting your life and building in cues that program you to be compliant to your regime, whatever that is. Yeah. So it's a bit like training a dog.
I can totally relate to that because I tend to find, and sometimes that drives my wife crazy. If I want to do something, I have to have it on my line of sight. So if I want to make sure that bill is paid, I have to literally take the bill and put it on my desk.
Yeah. Same.
If I need to drop off something to my kids' school, I have to make sure I put it next to the microwave so that I can be able to make sure that
that's your spot where I have to pick it up. Yeah,
so if I want to make sure I don't forget something, I put together with my kids. So yeah, it's making sure. I guess it's a way, for lack of a better word, to make this practical for people, is what can you do to make success inevitable?
Yeah.
What are some of the things you're putting in place? Because if you're always looking at the rear of your mirror, then sometimes it's a bit too late.
Yeah.
I've noticed you're starting to do a little bit more on the personal development side of things. Yeah. What's driven you to go down that? And obviously, you doing that for other people, helping other people with themselves. What's prompted you to go that direction? Is it something that is it more like overflowing from the things you worked for yourself and wanting to share with others, or what's attracting you to this? This direction.
So
maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
So I mean, Artemis Blueprint started as a conversation between myself and Cindy Kohler. Okay. So Cindy's been a life coach and a business coach for a very long time. We had coffee. All the best ideas come from coffee or whiskey. And so we were having a conversation, and she said, what would it look like if we took all of the hard yards and everything that we've learnt from like way back then to now and just distilled it into a program so other people didn't have to do the same amount of hard yards. So if I've done it over 30 years, she's done it over probably about the same. What if instead they could figure it out in 12 months? And that sounded really cool to us, and so we kind of pulled it all together. And what we worked out though is that it really is a process of kind of like you have to take yourself and set who you are today on fire, really, and burn it down to like the coals. So the true essence of who you are, because ego builds all of these walls and all these extra bits and pieces that you have to deal with. You got to set it on fire, and then and then from there you can actually work out from those embers. Then you can actually build something, and working out what showing up for yourself looks like every day. What is the best version of myself? If I existed in my perfect life, if I woke up in my perfect life after showing up for myself for 365 days, what would my day look like? What time would I wake up? What would I have for breakfast? Who would I be having breakfast with? What would my work look like? What kind of office would I have? And so, and then it's about building a blueprint to get there. So, our minds don't differentiate between real life and imagination. So if you can start imagining, then you'll start creating. And, gazillion years ago, like 13, 14 years ago, when I was learning how to become a counsellor, transpersonal counsellor, this is one of the exercises. You had to imagine your perfect life till you could reach out and touch it, like you had it that real. And so mine was, I woke up and I had time to take the kids to, school, and we could stop and get a coffee because coffee is my life. And then, I was in a comfortably appointed office with really cool people, and I met interesting people every day. I didn't know what kind of work I was going to do, but, just life was really good, and had a nice house with a swimming pool because I like to swim. And I woke up like 5 years down the track and there I was in the life that I'd imagined. Now, did I cognizantly know what I was doing on the way through? No. But because I had imagined it, it activates your reticular activation system, so you start seeing the opportunities. And then the other thing is, like, you learn to say yes to more things than you say no to. But you also know much quicker when something is a no. Like, you don't have to think about the no, because it's just no.
Okay. So it's a case of making sure that, yes, you envision what you wanted and it's happened. And a lot of it might not be, maybe some of it was designed, some of it was not designed, but it's now looking at how do I now, because I think a lot of us will, you will start with an imagination and somehow you find yourself successful, but it's not clearly success by design. But if you were to sort of pull it back and are able to reverse engineer the steps so that instead of things happening, and yes, you're glad that things happen, and yes, it was a product of you manifesting or imagining what is going to happen. So you're moving forward, you become very conscious, you become very deliberate in terms of what you're doing. And then it's a lot more quicker to get to the outcome quicker than the way it would have been if you would just go through life trying to figure it out. And I think that's the beauty of it, is once you work out, you have to work out who you are first as a human being rather than a human doing, before you can really bring all of who you are as a human being to your life. And once you bring all of who you are, life has a way of rewarding you for that. But it does require structure to step out of human doing, because our entire society invites us to be a unit of production. I did this today, I did that today. Like, people go, what did you do today? They don't go, how did you excavate your soul today? They, like, generally speaking. So it's, so that's where that came from. And I think for me, it's about working with other amazing human beings to help them discover how amazing they are. I think if more people discovered that, they will be in a happier place and achieve a lot more conscious being. Because I feel like, I don't know whether this is an age thing, but I feel like people should be there should be skills to learn this. I'm not finding that in my 40s, that the more there's a very big correlation between happiness and self-acceptance. And learning who you really are, how you work, how you get the most out of yourself. And so I'm glad you're doing this, because, like I said, there's got to be a way to teach this, as opposed to it becoming hindsight type. You only learn this once you've lived a bit longer. As we start to wrap up, what are some of the things you're excited about the future in terms of either your business, some of the things you're working on? What are some of the things you're really excited about?
Oh, goodness me. Well, it's a lot. I'm just trying to think about which ones I could talk about.
That's okay.
And I think what I'm really excited about is probably stepping more and more into a space where I can advocate for and influence industry. So over COVID, I spent a lot of time trying to keep the hospitality industry alive, and using all my marketing skills to, get press conferences and
you did
move
very
the needle.
well.
I did. It was good.
That was very impressive.
And it was a really good distraction. So fighting for an industry that you love distracts you from the fact that, you may not be able to put food on the table because that industry is dying. So it was beneficial. But so I think I'm excited to continue to, grow the hospitality offering over time. I think, people often ask us, are you going to open a pub in Melbourne or Sydney? And I think, I'm not ruling that out down the track once the boys are grown up. Like, they've still got 3 more years until Saxon is like 18. And I think once both of them are 18, then I've done the hard yards. And we can go off on adventures. So I think, expanding the hospitality offering will come, because it's Alex's passion as well. I think the marketing agency will continue to do what it does, but it will evolve with, more and more of that kind of AI lens. But I'm most excited, and it sounds trite, but I'm most excited just to actually enjoy being in my 50s and being really unapologetically me. And, you know, having the time, you reach a stage in your life where you've got time to have interesting conversations with people. You've kind of built your career to a point where my job is, you know, now really to make the world a better place, to coin one of my youngest phrases. So many years ago, and it was kind of funny. We were in their cars driving them to primary school, so they were pretty young. And Saxon, my youngest, goes, oh, you know, they were talking about when they start their own business and what size building they were going to have. And, you know, one would be on the first floor and one would be on the second floor. And, you know, Saxon goes, oh, Mum, when you finish making the world a better place, then you can come and be our secretary. And I was like, oh, darling, I'm like, nobody's secretary. It's a great job, but it's not what I'm built for. And, but what got me was the perception that I would be making the world a better place. And I think legacy, I think you reach a stage where legacy is what's important.
Yeah.
And for me, we really do need to do some work to make sure that our kids are coming into a state and a country and a future that they have a future in, and that they, you know, that it is enough to have grit, determination and resilience is enough for you to carve a life for yourself, which that's always been, you know, the great Australian dream or the great South Australian dream. And so, you know, I feel like in the next couple of years, my job is to make sure that that's still the case. And I don't know what that looks like, but I'll figure it out.
Yeah. Oh, well, that is exciting. Any final words to business owners in the growth journey, based on some of the lessons you've learned, some of the pitfalls to avoid? Any sort of like final advice, if you have to distill some of the things you've learned over building an agency, running a couple of pubs, starting some businesses, shutting down, consolidating all that. If you can distill all that stuff to say, all right, these are 3 things you need to make sure you focus on.
Yeah.
If you want to grow your business, or these things you need to think about. It could be strategic thing for them to grow, or it could be mental thing for them to think about, because it's hard to divorce the business strategy from the personal stuff, or it could be a combination of both. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You know, entrepreneurs in particular, like there's all one big happy mess.
It's one big happy mess.
So I would say, so number one, remember that your body is your engine and you got to fuel your engine. So, and that's like mentally have all the right professionals in your corner. So whether it's the massage therapist, whether it's the naturopath, you know, the acupuncturist, the chiropractor, like look after you first, because no one's going to care if you don't, but it will cost you down the track. And, you know, I've got to burn out once or twice in my career and it takes a long time to come back. And the older that you get, the longer it takes you to come back after you've broken yourself. So that's number one. Your body's your engine. You've got to get it serviced regularly. Number two, no coffee is a waste of time. So, you know, you're often on your journey, and as you become more successful, people are like, oh, can I just pick your brain? You know, this, that, the other. I don't tend to let people pick my brain. There's a charge for that. But I'm like, I'm happy to meet and have coffee and just be person to person with you and have a conversation. And so I've said to my staff, you know, like if I ever say that something is a waste of time, you're allowed to slap me, because that means I think I'm more important than other people, and I'm really not. You're not more important than anybody else in the room. And success comes from recognizing that, because some of the biggest learnings I've had in my life have come from people who, you know, in theory have nothing to offer me. If I was a judgmental cow, you know, but it turns out that they do. The smartest political mind I ever met, he was a pest control guy, you know, and it taught me so much stuff. So, yeah, so no coffee is a waste of time would be number two. Number three is you are going to have to trust people and let things go, but never let go of the numbers, because I've nearly lost businesses just because I took my eyes off the numbers and put somebody else in charge. And every other like business owner that's reached a certain stage that I talk to, they all have a horror story where they thought, oh yeah, I was at a point I could step out of the business and I brought in, you know, a manager or a person or whatever. And it cost me thousands or hundreds of thousands. And so that's the other key thing that I've learned is you have to trust and you have to let go, but don't let go of the numbers, because the numbers are the one source of truth. And I think probably the last thing is that, remember to have fun, and have fun with that. Like, build a tribe of people around you that are actually your tribe. So, for me, there's no point me hanging out with people who aren't living the life that I want to live. There's no point me hanging out with people who, are consistently going to tell me that I'm mad and I'm crazy and I'm this. Like, negative Nancys don't live in my world. They can live in somebody else's. So, you're allowed to have people question your judgment, but that's different. It's not the same.
That's really cool. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for coming in and generously sharing your insight. What would be the best way for people to find you, connect with you?
You can Google me. I'm everywhere.
Yeah,
so,
cool. Yeah.
no, look, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I have a website. I have, and as you were saying, I've spent a lot of time in the press. So there's probably lots of interesting articles to read on me as well. But I like, people can reach out however they like, and I think that's the thing about being seriously social is meet people where they're at and where they play.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
Thank you.